the issues raised in the pregnancy and abortion situation are actually instances of a much broader kind of issue that arise when we have interactions between different beings' rights and competition between their rights, or conflicts between their rights, interactions between their rights. So imagine you have the right to free speech, which you do, or let's say X does, and X lies to Y. Now, Y has a right to be told the truth. So now we have a conflict apparently between X's right to free speech and Y's right to be told the truth. So what's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? Intuitively, we think that it's wrong for X to lie, but we might think, and that's a fine conclusion, but it's just important to note that that is a restriction on X's right to free speech. And why? Because of Y's right to be told the truth, Y's right not to be lied to. Okay, so again, you have what is sometimes called the freedom of the person. This is your right basically to move your body about as you wish. So you have your right to move your arms around into a certain space, but that if someone is otherwise rightfully occupying that space, you don't have the right to move your arms into that space. So this is sometimes put with the phrase, your right to move your hand ends at the tip of my nose, which is where my rights kick in. So there's a rights competition between my right to occupy space without being attacked and your right to move your body around. And we tend to say that, and how those rights work out, and sort of when it's okay for you to move me and to put hands on me, and when it's not, well, that's an issue to be worked out. Again, to go back to the free speech case, let's suppose X decides to exercise their right to free speech by speaking publicly about Y. Well, Y has a right to privacy, and so we might ask, well, when does X's right to free speech allow them to speak publicly about Y, and when does Y's privacy right say, no, it would be wrong to speak publicly about me? And it depends upon whether or not Y is a celebrity or Y is a private individual, a private citizen, and so on. So again, we have competition between these two rights. You might have a right to self-defense, and someone else's property might, you need there's a piece of lumber that you need lying around, or let's say a car that you need to escape, or something like that, that doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to your attacker, it belongs to a third party. The third party has a property right over this piece of property, and generally you can't just use other people's property for your own ends. But what about a right to self-defense? It seems like, yeah, maybe your right to self-defense lets me say, okay, it is okay for me to use Y's property to defend myself from Z. Well, when? Or slightly differently, let's say that there's just you're completely dehydrated and you need water to survive. There's water over there. It doesn't belong to Y, but Y's property is in between you and the water. In general, you can't go. It's wrong to go onto other people's property. It's trespassing. But it seems like in this case, X's right to life gives them permission to cross across Y's property to get to the water. So there's this rights sort of overlap and rights conflict, and we can resolve them. So in general, what we have is sort of, let's say Jane has a right to A, say property or free speech or whatever, and Sue has a right to B, and if Jane does A, the thing she has a right to, that somehow means that Sue doesn't have B anymore. Do the rights conflict? Well, we might think they've been specified somewhat loosely, and really the right to A is a right to A or a right to B under certain conditions, and it's not a right to A or B under all conditions. And so what we need to do is figure out, okay, whose right is kicking in here and is really going to say, in this condition, I have a right to A and you don't have a right to B. Jane has a right to A and Sue's right to B doesn't apply here. Or no, Sue's right to B does apply here and Jane's right to A doesn't. So we have to figure out the scope of the rights. And that's the situation with the right to life and the right to bodily control. The violinist has a right to life. The violinist uses your body as an exercise of that right to life. But you have bodily autonomy. So how does this resolve, right? Is it the violinist right to life that is dominant, or is it the bodily autonomy right that's dominant? And we agreed in the previous video effectively that in that case the bodily autonomy right is dominant, because that the violinist does not have a right to use your body. It would be generous and kind and decent of you to allow the violinist to use your body, but the violinist doesn't have a right to use your body, and that means that it's not wrong of you to not let the violinist use your body. So what we have then is, with the right to life and the right to bodily autonomy, is an apparent overlap of spheres between, on the one hand, the right to life, and on the other hand, the right to the bodily autonomy right. The right to life in general gives you a right to what is required to stay alive, and that might require, might then you think give you a right to use another's body. On the other hand, bodily autonomy gives you a right to control your body and a right to refuse the use of your body to support another's life. And at least in the violinist case, we think that that right is the one that wins out. So that means the right to life is limited. The violinist has a right to life. The violinist needs to use your body to survive. You're not ethically required to let the violinist use your body. And that means that the violinist's right to life does not let the violinist use others' bodies to survive. So your bodily autonomy protects your body from the violinist. So we then have, what this means is the original premise of the anti-abortion pro-life argument is mistaken. That original premise says killing someone with the right to life is prima facie very wrong. That's not true. In some cases, bodily autonomy overrides the right to life. In general, in fact, one person's right to life doesn't allow that person to use another's body. So what we need is, what the pro-life argument needs is a new premise, which might be something like this. You're killing something with the right to life is prima facie very wrong, unless the killing is allowed by one of your rights. So then the question is, does the mother's bodily autonomy allow killing the embryo or fetus? Is it like the kidnappee's bodily autonomy, or is the situation different? So we've seen in this video that this issue about bodily autonomy and the right to life is an instance of a more general kind of issue about rights competition. And so now we're going to try to resolve the issue of the specific rights competition in our next videos.